Corwin, then Carter's got pills.
Well, I think Jareth is related. The sheriff was George Corwin, but Jareth is related. Corwin is a common name in the area. Bishop was a common name in the area. Hawthorne was.
Yeah, which reminds me. Okay, here's the thing. When I saw Hawthorne, the first thing I thought was, oh, that's Nathaniel's relative, which it was, but. And then it made me remember like every story I've ever read by H.P. Lovecraft, where
Who was for this? The lake created at the end of the story, the color from out of space.
Right. Yes.
That's just, it's about equidistant in the other direction. If you do sort of we don't do straight lines in New England. Look at our road map sometimes. It's a mess. But from Salem town to Salem village was a certain distance, and then from Salem village to Hamilton, Great Pond in Hamilton, is approximately the same distance again. And that's, historians think that the setting for the color from out of space was the Great Pond in Hamilton.
Right. And there's a couple of stories where Lovecraft like has a character like go after Cotton Mather or Nathaniel Hawthorne's ancestors. And so seeing that, I was like, ooh, Cthulhu hangs out, dripping his dirty claws over Salem. Ooh, for a moment, just a moment. And then I moved on because I don't really want to give love to a racist. I just don't. So anyway, but so there's, at the time, she was she's basically suggested that she was a liar. Like they accused her of basically running the local public house. She had it open too late, that, she was keeping people drinking and playing a game called shovelboard, which I'm hoping is actually what we now know as shuffleboard, but I could be wrong. But it was anyway, when she was examining the docket and sentenced to hang, she kept saying things like, I've never been here before. I don't know any of these people. So the one of the scientific theories, and Jeff kind of goes with it. Jeff actually says that there's no evidence one way or the other than the court record. And the court record is her denying. So if you really wanted to go on the side of the townspeople, she could be lying. But he suspects that she was confused with Sarah Bishop, which happened often. And so her going, I don't know these people. I have never even been here before, is her realistically saying you got the wrong guy. And, or in this case, wrong girl. And so.
Sir.
What?
Headache.
Oh, I'm sorry. So. But long story short, she was convicted largely on spectral evidence because they brought the girls in. They asked the girls, hey, is this the girl? And they're like, oh, yes, absolutely. She's one of them. She's absolutely one of them. And so if she would gesture toward them, they'd swoon. And like court was like, well, that's proof right there, which is so ridiculous to me. Just I on the one hand, I'm like, how do learned humans of any time period believe this horse pucky? And then at the same time, I'm like, we need to bring spectral evidence back. It would make some of these court cases so much more interesting. So I don't really want it, but on a Saturday Night Live level, okay.
It'd be fun to play around with, but having been involved with the court system, it's a lot of eyewitness testimony is basically the same thing.
Oh yeah. In fact, I was watching Forensic Files the other night, and that there was a case of a woman that was sexually assaulted and stabbed. Now she didn't die, but
Well, yeah.
But the guy did his best to kill her. It wasn't his fault she didn't. She just had the will to live, you know. And like they find a guy, it matches the description. She hears his voice, she sees that's the guy, only the DNA says no, it's not the guy. And at one point, she's like, I'm watching his house thinking, I need to kill him because it's the guy. And then they find the guy years later and it's not that guy. And she's just like, I'm so glad that I didn't do what I did, or what I was thinking about, because it would have been the wrong guy. But it highlights the problem with eyewitness testimony, because she didn't misidentify the guy out of anything other than that's a stressful situation to be in. It alters your perceptions, and you may not be able to put yourself back in those perceptions once you're out of that situation. And so you might lose precious details.
Well, I mean, even when you're not stressed out, I've told the story before on my show about how my husband and I used to live across from Salem Hospital, and there's sort of a T intersection, and because it's a hospital, there's a lot of people driving distracted, driving unwell in various ways, and so there were a lot of fender benders right outside our window, and we got used to keeping, a pad of paper on the table right next to the window, and you'd hear that noise and we'd both run over there and we'd try and make down, make and model of the car, any license information we could get, because a lot of people hit and run. And the number of times where Willem would say that was a blue car and I'd be like, no, it was red. And I mean, fundamentally, like, we both believe it, and neither of us are stressed, especially. We're just in our living room, no big deal. And we're not traumatized. And yet we saw something that made him think blue and I thought red, and vice versa. And once you hear yourself say it, you believe it. And so eyewitness testimony memory in general is so easily influenced and shaken up and changed, and it's not good. Everybody out there who's like, oh, he was convicted on circumstantial evidence, let me tell you what, I would rather be convicted any day of the week on circumstantial evidence rather than eyewitness testimony.
Well, it's like years ago, I was living in a part of Kansas City. It's not super friendly. A lot of gang activity goes on there. And I came out my door one morning and I heard snoring, really loud snoring. And so, just out of curiosity, I sort of try to track it down. Sounds like it's coming from above me. So I walk up the stairs, because it's an apartment complex. So it's like 3 levels, and each level has 2 doors, and 2 doors equal goes in. So I get upstairs, and there's a guy laying there. His shirt is gone, his pants are unbuttoned, and he is snoring to beat the band, like loudly, like louder than I've heard anybody snore. And I tried saying, hey, or wake up. I didn't want to touch him, because maybe he's a drunk sleeping it off. You never know. And I don't want him to wake up and think, oh, there's the devil, I have to kill him. So I'm trying to be, and when he won't wake up, I decide, okay, I'm going to call the police. If he needs medical attention, they can figure that out. That was my reasoning. If he needs medical attention, they are better at this than me. So I call the police, and they get there, and they call in medical attention, and the guy's taken to the hospital, and he winds up dying because he was beaten nearly to death. And eventually he died from his injuries, but he was beaten. They beat the hell out of him, apparently. Well, as I was there talking to the police, I saw a car pull up, see me, and pull out. And it was SUV. It was white. That's all I remember about it now. And the only reason I remember it now is because when I first called the police and told them about it, that's what I said. But when they called me back in like 2 weeks later, because they got the guy and they just wanted to confront him with the fact that we have someone that has seen you, and someone at that point had already called my cell phone and threatened me. They told me to stop snitching, right? I have no idea who it was. I wouldn't have answered it, but I was driving at the time and I was expecting a call from a booker. So I didn't even look at it. I just answered the phone. And so I was kind of upset. And so I gave a description of the car as, I think, a gold Cadillac or something, because in my head at that moment, that's what it was. Now, everything else I said matched up. And so like eventually the guy took a plea deal, but like the cop afterwards was like, man, it's, you know, last time we talked, you knew it was a white car. It was weird that you didn't this time. And I was like, oh yeah, it was. Holy. But in my head at that moment, it had changed. And I firmly believed it.
Mhm.
So I'm with you.